Okay, hey, welcome Intermedia partners to our fourth session for the Friday session for this week of concise and compelling events around Exchange and 365 with a scary but not too frightening theme. Today is our session around Teams, which I think has been extremely interesting. We've been talking about it all week. My name is Craig Woods. I'm responsible for product marketing for 365 Exchange and productivity apps, and I'm joined by Randy Ide, who is the product manager for the same portfolio of products, and we have a special guest today that we're going to introduce as well. But we're going to go through a lot of material around Teams and how to and what partners need to know about Teams and voice services and 365. Important. Please take advantage of this opportunity to let us know how it's going and what you think of the material. We're very interested in feedback about both the topic, the content, and then other things, other types of topics that you'd be interested in. The best way to do that is please use the Q&A feature that's at the top of your screen. We'll try to answer questions as we go along. We have a jam-packed session. If we're not able to, we promise we'll follow up with you on questions. But we want to make sure that you get the most out of today's session and that we're able to answer things as we go along if we can. This is our fourth session. Now, Tuesday we went through security for 365 and Exchange. Wednesday, we went through Exchange versus 365. How do I talk about the different plans? How do I help a customer pick the right solution? How do I deal with migration questions? Yesterday, we went through add-ons like security, archiving, secure sync, and voice for Exchange and 365. And today, it's all about Teams. Everybody who's registered is going to get copies of all of the presentations, all of the sessions that we've gone through, recordings, and what I hope is a very interesting asset list of resources to help you. So so glad you're here today. You haven't missed anything. Thanks if you were attending a previous session. And here we go. We're going to talk about Exchange and 365, just to set the context. We're going to talk about Teams and what it is. We're going to talk a little bit about decision points, how to think about it, Unite versus other options. And then what does it mean to really get in more depth around Teams? What are the implications around voice? How does that work? What are some of the Unite integration options? Then we're going to introduce a special guest, one of our partners that's offered to participate in today's session to talk about their experience with Intermedia Unite. And they have a background with Exchange and 365. And then if we've got time, we'll have a Q&A session. Again, if we're not able to answer your questions, we'll get back to you. So please, please, please enter questions and comments and feedback in the Q&A. Okay, so the context for this is, you're probably familiar because we've focused this week's sessions on Exchange and 365. We've talked about both ecosystems as parallel ecosystems that we can move a customer between. If they start with Exchange and they want to get to 365, how to do that, how the add-ons work, how voice works. Now, what about Teams? Because we get a lot of questions from partners and customers about where does Teams fit into this? Because I'm using Exchange today, and in fact, I'm using what was Office apps. I see a lot of information about Teams client availability, but I'm trying to show my customer how Teams works. What is Teams about? So let's start by doing a quick level set. The main components of Teams it includes chat capabilities for private and group chat. It includes meeting capabilities so that you can run meetings within Teams to people that are part of your Teams network, I'll say, but it's really people that are in your federated environment. It has great capabilities for collaborating on projects with work product that is generated from Office 365 apps. And in many cases, that's the primary driver. We have a project. I'm very familiar with Teams. I want to share this. Maybe I want to use SharePoint as part of this, but I want to use Teams as my hub for collaboration for all of our work. And then the added component here that we're going to spend a lot more time talking about is the calling. How do I deal with internal calls, external calls, conference calling options for Teams? Okay, so Teams conceptually has a client application, which is the interface that I work with to define my project and to communicate with, set up what it is I want to share. Um, at the back end, though, to really, if you want to share with other people, you need to have access to team services. And so there's a front end piece which you can either do online through online access if you have an account set up, a client account set up, or the desktop app. So it's analogous to Word or Excel in that you can use them online or you can install the app. It really is a question of preference. But without team services at the back end, what you have is extremely limited. In some ways, it's more like having Outlook. You can work with Outlook, but as soon as I want to share something with somebody else, I need access really to team services. I'm generalizing a bit, but if I want to share calendars, if I want to do group chat, group collaboration, I need to have that back end service. One of the challenges is that Microsoft has promoted Teams because it's very popular, very interesting, very broadly. And one of the ways that they promote that is by spreading the Teams client around in lots of different forms. So it's actually included in what was Office apps was then Microsoft Business and is now Microsoft 365 apps. So a customer can download the Teams client in lots of places, but that doesn't mean that they have access to the Teams services and so to Teams collaboration. Now, the most common question that we get is, okay, but I'm using hosted Exchange today. How does this work? And the challenge is you can download the Teams application, but it doesn't connect. Microsoft is not interested in promoting this with Exchange. They're interested in promoting this with 365. So to take advantage of Teams services, you have to be on a 365 plan. You have to be on a 365 plan. That includes the team services, which is most 365 plans, not all, but we'll show, but that's going to be the next step is we'll show you which ones. Okay, so went through that really quickly. Randy, are there any highlights that we need to clarify around that?
No, I think you hit the highlights there. Just a nuance on something you said there in terms of being able to work with hosted Exchange. It's the deep integration between Teams, calendaring, things like that, that requires to have the full Teams experience to actually have an Exchange Online mailbox or Microsoft 365 mailbox. Otherwise, you really have a very limited experience.
Exactly. So we see a lot of situations where they downloaded the Teams client, they kind of got started, but they run into something that they would like to be able to do that requires the deep integration, and boom, you kind of hit the wall of what's available, which is the full Teams functionality, which you need to go to 365 for. Okay, so a little bit of context, and this is something that we spent more time talking about on Wednesday, which was how do you set the context between Unite and Teams collaboration. So one way to think about this is Teams is super popular. It's built into 365, and what it primarily addresses, where it starts, is a project view of work product that I'm creating with 365 apps. So if I'm primarily focused on collaboration, which means sharing things that I'm working on with the rest of my team, that's where most customers and partners start with Teams. They want to set up projects, they want to identify who is involved in the project, and then they want to share work product. They might use SharePoint for some of this, but they want to share Word files, Excel files, decks, things like that that are all associated with the project. Unite is really based around the idea of unified communications. So I want one hub for my chat, for calling, and for meetings. So there is some overlap, and part of it from a solution selling standpoint is figuring out where's the customer at, what's the critical problem that they're trying to solve, and then what's the mix of capabilities that I need to provide. So if they're in Exchange, for example, today, and what they're really looking for is a better chat solution, or they need to add meetings or simple file sharing, it could well be that Unite added to their Exchange environment will address what they need. On the other hand, if they have a lot of experience with Teams, or you just know that that's where it's going, you can address that with a 365 plan. And particularly if it starts with a discussion of a shared project workspace, that's a very strong function that's built into Teams. It doesn't exactly have an analog in Unite, so it's a strong reason to go to Teams, which means if it's an Exchange customer, you're going to probably go down the migration path. And again, you may complement that with add-ons like email protection and archiving and secure sync. But from a collaboration and communication standpoint, that's probably a strong indicator. Yeah, this is a Teams. This is primarily a Teams opportunity. In other cases, and again, this reflects what we've seen with the rest of our customer base. They may have more basic needs. They may just need online meetings. And so any meeting added to their environment may do exactly what they need. So the point here is that it's really important to have a solution selling focus on dealing with the customer to develop the right solution for them. We can help you with that. But today we're going to kind of assume that you need to go down the Teams path. And so we're going to show you what's involved in that, what it looks like, and particularly what that means in terms of your voice options. Okay, so Randy.
Yeah, great. Let me talk through some of the high-level plans here. Of course, we have lots of different plans. Microsoft has lots of different plans. These are just kind of the key popular ones. And just by the way, we resell the plans exactly the way Microsoft packages them. Sometimes we get questions, hey, does Intermedia's version of 365 have XYZ? And the answer would be yes. We sell it the way Microsoft does. But going left to right, the first one is the Microsoft apps, aka Office apps, Office. Lots of different names for it. That particular package is perfect add-on to Hex. We definitely find people will stay on Hex. It reduces churn from Hex when that package is added to Hosted Exchange. But as Craig said, despite all of the confusion that Microsoft's created in the marketplace, that particular package does not include Teams. If you look at all of the other packages going across other than Exchange Online, all of the other packages have Teams included, and many of the other less common SKUs and bundles also have Teams. So pretty common add-on. So if you think through what the path is for your customer, definitely encourage you to go through that decision tree as Craig had outlined to see, is a move to 365 from Hex the right move for that particular customer? If it is, keep in mind we do have free and best-in-class migration. We don't charge any extra for those tools. We can definitely make it an easy and seamless experience for customers that need to move from hosted Exchange, on-premise Exchange to 365. So talking about 365 and Teams and Voice. So I want to go through the components that are required to deliver a Microsoft Cloud Voice solution, and then we'll talk about the plans from Intermedia that could be used as an alternative, and we think in most cases a superior solution for voice, but it helps to understand the components. So for a Microsoft Voice solution, you need Office 365, you need to have Teams, and you need to have their Cloud PBX phone system, which they call a Microsoft phone system. And that for most plans is an $8 add-on. But at that point, you really can't make internal or external calls with it. So you also, from Microsoft, would need to add on their calling plan. And if you are using Microsoft's meetings, if you're using Microsoft to do online meetings and you want to have somebody to have a dial-in, just a regular dial-in phone number from from a PSTN phone, that's going to be another $4 to add that on, depending on what package you're on. So there's a lot of components, and you need to get the phones, and you need to make sure that they all work well and support all of those components working together. And so if you look at what does that look like financially, so you would have whatever your base 365 plan is, you have a calling plan on top of that, and you've got phones, which together is going to be about $20 plus about $4 for that conference add-on. So it's basically about $24 on top of, this is a Microsoft list price, on top of whatever 365 plan that already has Teams. And then if you look at what functionality that would give you, let's say compared to Unite, we've got a much more extensive set of PBX calling features. We include unlimited calling, and of course, all of our meetings, the online meetings, all have a dial-in phone bridge, as well as options for call recording, contact center integration, and a very high uptime. It's going to be 5 nines compared to 3 nines. And Microsoft's a great partner of ours. Lots of great things about Microsoft. We'll let you judge by, for yourself, if you're more comfortable getting support directly from Microsoft, trying to figure out those components together, or going through us. Certainly, JD Power award-winning support. Support is certainly a strength for us. So things to consider as you look at voice for 365 for Teams. Certainly our Unite and Elevate products work very well independently of 365 and independently of Teams. We have lots of people using it that way today. But should you want or have specific customer needs where they want the Unite Elevate product to be integrated and work with Unite Teams. Specifically, they want to use that little dialing app that is inside of the Microsoft Teams app. We do have an integration and a way to do that. It requires Microsoft Teams, and it requires a third-party product called Call to Teams. And with that, we can integrate into Teams. Your customers would be able to use the dialer within Teams to make calls and to receive calls, but on the back end, all of the phone functionality would be handled by Unite or Elevate, depending on which branch you're using. So if you look at what does that solution look like when you're done, you're going to have 365, you're going to have Teams, you're going to have that phone system SKU, which is required from Microsoft to integrate any third-party PBX. You won't have the calling plans. You won't have the Microsoft audio conferencing because those services will be delivered through Unite. And then you'll have an integrated version of Unite with Call to Teams. Nice thing about that is going that route, again, we do sell the phones. We also have a lot of tools for our private label partners in particular related to voice, like the ability to do check the line quality in advance of installation, the ability to set your own prices and deal with all of the taxation issues that you really won't be able to do that with a Microsoft calling solution, or with the calling plans from Microsoft, I should say. And then, of course, the one-stop shop for support in an integrated solution. So I know we kind of went through that pretty quickly. So when you put it all together, this is what it would look like. As I mentioned before, you get the advantages of the Unite product, all the PBX features. When you go to call, you can call through the Microsoft Teams application experience. Again, it's not required that you have this integration, but if that's desired, we certainly can do it. Unite and 365 certainly coexist without integration as well.
Hey, thanks, Randy. So, we've been through a lot. I think this can feel kind of dense. So before I bring in our special guest, so let's just try to set this in context. Our partners typically, are coming from, many of you are coming from an Exchange and 365 environment, and now through Teams, you're being asked to provide additional capabilities, specifically get into voice. This has been for a long time a huge part of our business, in addition to Exchange, obviously, in 360 and 365. So we have a lot of experience on the voice side that we can help you leverage. With 365 and Teams, you have a number of different options. You can deploy voice, Unite, with 365 if that's what a customer needs. You can deploy Unite with 365 and Teams if that's what a customer wants. You can also take advantage of the call to Teams integration that we've done if they have some very specific requirements around how they want the voice capabilities integrated into Teams. But at a high level, what we're seeing is many of our partners are getting pulled into voice. From our perspective, hey, that's a good thing because that's another big part of our business. And they're looking at these Microsoft options that can provide some of these capabilities versus what's available with Unite. So to that point, what I want to introduce is our special guest today. We have Travis Woods joining us from one of our valued partners. They're actually out here in the Bay Area. And Travis works for FortPoint IT, and they have a lot of experience in the past with Exchange and 365, and they've come in now with Unite. So we'd like to invite Travis to talk about his experience in now adding Unite to their portfolio and and what that has been like.
Yeah, thanks so much, Craig. I appreciate it. The way that we kind of come to this solution, as far as like choosing Unite, everyone needs Teams. The Office 365 platform and Teams is an essential. And a lot of our clients said, what about phones? And we were kind of scrambling. So the way that we found the Unite product was because it was really easy to deploy. It was real easy to get my staff trained up on it. But more than that is that it is real comfortable for the client. Our clients have, they're used to having a phone. They're used to these experiences. And because we have such flexibility with being able to integrate it now with Teams, it was just a perfect combo. We're like, this makes a lot more sense, because we looked at plugging in the Microsoft phone aspect of it, and it's complex. You think that the name changes from Office Business Standard to Premium was complex. Like the mechanics of their phone system was also really complex. And so for a small team, FortPoint is a pretty small team here. We didn't have the resources to bone up on that. So we took a product that works really well, has great customer satisfaction among our users, and was able to plug it right into this Teams environment that's already there.
All right. All right. Hey, thanks, Travis. So uh, I think this is a great example of how many of our partners are kind of seeing their businesses evolve, and it's part of that dynamic that Microsoft is driving. Particularly around Teams, and we do see a huge amount of interest in Teams. So super interested in questions that you enter. We'll try to answer those today. So please, and also please give us feedback on the session and other topics. So let's see, Randy, are there some questions that have come in that we want to try to tackle?
Yeah, definitely see some questions coming in. This one is from Ruben. Does Intermedia offer the Microsoft 365 Business Premium? And it was funny that you had mentioned the all of the name changes and how confusing that is. So yes, we do, as we call it, a back pocket SKU, which means you can ask your partner account manager, and if they're not familiar with it, certainly ask them to ask their product manager internally, which will be me, and we can provide that SKU for you. Probably later this year or early next year, we'll just have it available in HostPilot as one of the normal offers. But it just isn't quite there yet. But we can get it to you.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, we work very closely with Microsoft, and so we're trying to track the changes that they're making to the plans. You know, to Randy's point, all of the plans that we're reselling are standard Microsoft plans. You know, a very frequent question is, I saw that, you know, E3 included this feature or this new product. Is that part of what I would get if I resold this through Intermedia? Absolutely. You know, sometimes our descriptions lag, um, but we're reselling the same thing. So whatever you're seeing on the Microsoft site is what's available through the plan as we provide it. Okay, so Randy, I see a specific question about the Teams client app, I think.
Yep, yeah, definitely. From Troy, what specific features of the free Teams product work without the backend component? So that's a great question because there's a free version, there's a trial version, and depending on what plans you're on, it may or may not be available to you. So what I would say is that in a trial version, technically, all of the features are available of Teams. If you want to do some of the calling type stuff, you might need to pay incrementally for those add-ons. The challenge that we quite often hear from our reseller channel is not so much is a particular feature available on a trial version or a free version of Teams, but how does that work and play with customers that are not on Office 365 already? And that's where the challenges come in, because if you're on a hosted Exchange, or let's say you have an on-premise Exchange, and that's where your email is, that's where your calendaring is, that's where your primary identity is for all of your users. If you have a separate Teams installation, let's say it's on a different domain or it's on Microsoft domain, the challenge is then it won't seamlessly work with your existing calendars, in some cases your email. So it's really more of an integration and compatibility depending on where you're getting your email today.
Right. Hey, Randy, so there's a follow-up related question about Teams integration with hosted Exchange and if we're working on that.
So there are technical limitations imposed by Microsoft, and we are always asking them to remove those limitations. A couple of times a year, we try and make the business case every single time. And so far, the answer has been no. Like I said, that you could conceivably have them coexist, but if you're looking at things for shared calendar or integrated calendaring with the Teams site or something like that, that's where you're going to run into some issues. So we would happily provide deeper integration to Teams with hosted Exchange. And as soon as Microsoft allows us a path to do that, then we'll definitely pursue that. But so far, they've really kind of drawn a line there,
Yeah,
especially on the user integration.
yeah, exactly. They're more interested in driving Teams business to 365 than making that available through hosted Exchange, unfortunately. So it's possible that'll change, but it's very unlikely. And we you know that's why today's session is really important. You know, we want to try to make sure that you have a good path to get to Teams, that you're comfortable with that it makes sense to move a customer from Exchange to 365 with Teams with us and maintain, you know, you can maintain their business, we can maintain the same level of support. And then, you know, we want to have you thinking ahead of time about these other issues that you're going to run into, which are, okay, now how do I address the voice opportunities requirements that come along with Teams? because you're going to get into it. You're going to get drawn into the discussion, and as Travis said, you're going to want to make sure that you have a simple and supportable and a solution that is easy for you to support, and that you are not caught up in a situation where now, hey, this isn't working. I enabled the Microsoft calling plan, but they're running into reliability issues or device compatibility questions or feature questions, and
Yeah, I mean,
I keep.
sure you
Go ahead,
guys have
Travis.
that the being able to for my techs to dig into an individual call. If we have a client that calls us, that call was rubbish, we can dial right, we can get right into that and say, oh, okay, well, we see exactly where the call quality failed, and this is likely why, and that's amazingly helpful for a client. That provides them a lot more trust in the system, knowing that there's that quality of service is there. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Hey, so we're at the top of the half hour, pretty condensed program. Thanks for coming. Again, everybody's registered is going to get all of the sessions, all the session content, all the assets and resources that we've gone through for the whole week. Super interested in your feedback, either in the chat or in the Q&A. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Hope this has been valuable. Much appreciation to Travis for joining us today and giving the perspectives of a very important partner, with super relevant experience in this. So thanks for coming, and have a great rest of the day. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, folks.